something fundamental has broken between men and women. You can feel it in every conversation about relationships, every discussion about marriage, every debate about children. We've reached a point where the two genders are operating from completely different playbooks, and men are finally realizing that playing by the old rules means losing everything. Let me explain why men across the world are done being the understanding, accommodating, self-sacrificing good guys that society demanded we be. The ideological divide between genders has become a canyon. I see it every day in my practice. A man talks about wanting a traditional family structure, not because he wants to oppress anyone, but because he's seen what works. He's immediately labeled as controlling, outdated, toxic. Meanwhile, she wants all the benefits of traditional male provision while maintaining complete. They're the hero and the other is the villain. She sees herself as breaking free from oppression, pursuing empowerment, claiming her independence. He sees himself as offering stability, commitment, and partnership, only to be treated like an ATM with no authority. Neither can understand why the other doesn't see it their way. This loss of empathy and gender relations is staggering. I had a couple in counseling where the wife couldn't understand why her husband was upset about being excluded from decisions about their children's education. "I'm the mother," she said, as if that explained everything. When I asked her how she'd feel if he made financial decisions without her input, she said that was completely different. But it's not different. It's the same dismissal of a partner's involvement. The conversations reveal how deep this emotional detachment goes when men, involved enough. When they express hurt about being sidelined, they're told to stop being dramatic. There's literally no acceptable way for men to advocate for their own involvement. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the systemic imbalance in family courts. For decades, the legal system has operated on the assumption that mothers are inherently better parents. Fathers were visitors in their children's lives, weekend entertainment, check writers. This wasn't based on evidence or child psychology. It was based on outdated gender assumptions that somehow only seem to matter when they benefit one side. I've counseled hundreds of divorced fathers, and their stories are heartbreakingly similar. Good men, involved fathers who suddenly find themselves reduced to every other weekend. Men who coached a little league, did homework every night, never missed a recital. No, naturally more nurturing. Lawyers who advise men to just accept standard visitation. Court evaluators who scrutinize fathers for working full-time, but don't question mothers for the same. The system has been rigged for so long that people think the rigging is natural law. But here's where things get interesting. Reform is becoming a turning point for parental equality. Several states and countries have started implementing default 50-50 custody laws. Equal time, equal responsibility, equal authority. And guess what's happening? The people who claim to want equality are losing their minds. Kentucky passed a shared parenting law, and feminist organizations fought it tooth and nail. Florida tried to pass similar legislation, and it was vetoed after massive pressure from women's groups. Why? If equality is the goal, why fight equal parenting? Because it was never about equality. The real story, in states with equal custody laws, divorce rates have dropped significantly. Turns out, when both parties know they'll share equal responsibility and can't use kids as weapons, they work harder to make marriages work. When the nuclear option isn't as attractive, people choose negotiation over destruction. This reveals something important. Many divorces weren't about irreconcilable differences. They were strategic moves enabled by a biased system. When you know you'll get the kids, the house, and financial support, leaving becomes an easier choice. Remove those guarantees, and suddenly people discover they can work through problems. The female control over family dynamics has been institutional policy for decades. Not just custody, but decision-making power. Schools call mothers first. Doctors defer to mothers' wishes, even when fathers are equally involved. I see this control play out in intact marriages, too. She makes unilateral decisions about the children's activities, education, medical care, then tells him about it afterward. If he objects, he's controlling. If he wants input, he's undermining her maternal instincts. The message is clear. Fathers should provide resources, but not opinions. The loss of this dominance is deeply unsettling for those who've grown accustomed to it. When men start demanding equal say, equal time, equal authority, it's framed as an attack on motherhood itself, but it's not. It's simply asking for the equality that's been preached but never practiced when it comes to parenting. The myth of male danger is one of the most destructive narratives in our society. We've been conditioned to see fathers as potential threats to their own children. Every man in a park with his kid is viewed with. Statistics tell a different story than the narrative. Mothers are statistically more likely to abuse children than fathers. Mothers' boyfriends, not biological fathers, pose the highest risk to children. But these facts don't fit the story, so they are ignored. Instead, we operate on the assumption that children are safer away from their fathers, despite all evidence to the contrary. This cultural conditioning runs so deep that even men internalize it. Fathers doubt their own ability to parent. They defer to mothers even when their instincts are right. They accept being treated as babysitters in their own homes. The programming has convinced everyone, including men themselves, that they're secondary parents at best. The institutional and media bias is overwhelming. Watch any family court drama. Read any article about custody disputes.